evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, the largest single-screen drive-in in the United States. We're certainly glad you could be with us this evening, and don't forget the concession stand is open with all kinds of great things to eat and drink.
89.3 Mahoning Drive-In Radio, your old friend Virgil back once again for another exciting episode of the podcast. As you guys know, the only podcast dedicated to the love and revival of our beloved drive-in culture. Joined as always by my co-host and general manager here at the Mahoning. Mark, say hello, my friend.
Hello.
Man, what a wave this season has been already. For those of you guys looking for a timestamp, we are about halfway through our 2024 season. Definitely in the heart of the summer, as today we'll be reviewing our August calendar of events. But we just had VHS Fest and we just had Tromathon back to back to kind of kick off July. And boy, oh boy, both of those events are marathon runs. They're both very, very popular. So we had a lot of people on the lot the last couple weeks. So apologize if our brains are a little more fried than normal.
And let us not neglect to mention Real Rumble. We had Troma and then Real Rumble in the same weekend. So the craziness, the ribaldry, if I may use an old-timey phrase, of Troma, and then the next day we have large people just beating the tar out of each other on the lot. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I got to give a huge congratulations to the LVAC team. Their best turnout since we started doing this thing. It was incredible to see the amount of people that came out to enjoy the live wrestling underneath of the screen, but also all the people that stayed for They Live. It was just amazing. And there were several moments, kind of countless over the last couple weekends, that are just like, hey, we're hitting our stride. We're really, really doing something right here. It's connecting with people that join our community every single night at the Mahoning. It just seems to grow. And our Thursday events really have been showing the power of the accessibility for people and new people trying us out with a single feature or something that's an easier lob for them than a all-out kind of convention weekend. But Princess Bride, we actually had a record-breaking Thursday. So we had a record-breaking Thursday, record-breaking Sunday, and Tromathon as the meat in the sandwich. It was just crazy.
And was that not the best attended Tromathon we've had? It kind of felt like it was, at least on that.
Oh, definitely. I think maybe the pandemic year, the very first year, may have been slightly more attended, but we sold out like every show that year. You know, it was like we were fighting to keep it safe and keep it under control with the amount of people that were catching on and all that stuff. But yeah, huge shout out to JT and Lisa and the Troma team, obviously Uncle Lloyd. That event just went off without a hitch, you know?
And there was a lot of moving parts on that show. That's not just, if people who haven't been out to Troma or to a Real Rumble or a VHS Fest, it's vendors, it's live bands, it's costumed characters, it's a photo op, it's food specials, it's a lot of moving parts. And I went into Troma very nervous about all those moving parts, and it went so well between our staff and the Troma staff, and JT really kind of pretty much organizing the whole thing and keeping that all together while dressed as the Toxic Avenger.
That was the best.
Leaning over to me, he's like, make sure you do this and make sure you do that. And I'm like, okay, Toxie monster hero. It was great.
Yeah. He just, they did such an amazing job promoting it this year. It connected with fans. We had the 50th anniversary celebration for Troma as a whole, and then Toxie's 40th birthday. Like you said, it was like a cake with endless layers of icing stacked on top of it. And it was incredibly daunting going into it, knowing, okay, we're juggling all these parts. I got to say, it was probably roughest on the lot crew, just because it was way more than a normal Mahoning show. It's like bands are showing up, people from Troma are showing up. It was constantly just a kind of chase down of who is this person and are they supposed to be here? Where are they supposed to be? And they just stepped up like crazy, you know? I gotta say, Donnie as the new addition on the lot crew, like he will rock with me until the sun comes up, and on nights like Tromathon or VHS Fest, when people are literally up until the sun comes up, it's a huge blessing, just
I
on a
was
mental level too, to have somebody like to bounce back and laugh at and laugh with at 5 a.m.
I was going to say, so for Troma, it was both nights were triple features, if I'm recalling this correctly, but there
Yes.
was a secret feature on screen on Saturday night. And you told me I was up, I slept in as I am afforded to do sometimes because we stay up so late. And I messaged you about something and you said, sorry, just getting up. And then you told me what time the show ended. And what time was that on Friday?
5:30 on. We literally had just beaten the sun. Like we wouldn't have gotten Image if we were another 15 minutes. But the reason we did it was Doug Sackman, who passed away, was a big figure in the Troma community. And he had a ton of people come out for him specifically and to pay tribute to him. And it's a gathering for him, very much like we did for Jeff that opening weekend. And they obviously all stayed up late, very late. And Doug directed a movie when he was working on the Warp Tour. And it was this really fun movie starring all the bands that were performing in the Warp Tour, which are like high profile bands. And it's just them getting killed off one by one by this weird character, which ended up being him. Super, super weird, super fun. The dedication, obviously, for us to play it. But obviously for the fans, it was just like incredible. And I had so many people come up to me the next day and say like, I totally stayed up the whole time. I was up. So it was a really, really nice weekend. And one that, like, again, far exceeded the expectations.
I mean,
I
every
think
night, Thursday through Sunday, was like a home run.
it was crazy, and we were jumping in and adding extra registers on Thursday and Sunday. We were trying to keep everybody as happy as possible with the amount of people that just bombarded the lot.
Well, with
But
Real Rumble, what we've always found is that if people don't know, Real Rumble is live pro wrestling underneath our screen in a full-size wrestling ring. Everybody brings their chairs up and watches that up to an hour or so before the sun goes down, and then we play wrestling themed movie at night. And what we have found is that the snack bar is totally dead during the wrestling because that's what everybody's there for, is to see the live show. So inside the snack bar, there's nothing happening for about 2 hours. And then once that last body is slammed and Victor has been crowned, it's a tidal wave that hits the snack bar, and it was a nonstop long line at the snack bar, and we move that line along as fast as we possibly can. But we always say that the snack bar closes 20 minutes into the first movie if it's a single feature or the only movie. And I was joking with Zoe, I'm like, we're going to ring up this last person in line and pretty much immediately close the snack bar, because it was through most of the first reel of They Live, people were still getting their food because they had been up front in the sun watching the thrills and chills the whole time. And you jumped on with an extra cash register, mobile cash register. Sandy jumped on to doing popcorn. I was running drinks back and forth because the drink cooler couldn't stay full because people were buying so much. It was
yes,
wonderful and crazy, and kind of an appropriately nutty way to end that weekend.
yeah, and it's been that this year of us kind of getting these big waves and figuring out what we can do to kind of make the process better or quicker. And I don't think we mentioned it on the podcast yet, but right before VHS Fest, we got the concession team a brand new grill. And this thing is like night and
that's
day
for
compared to the
cooking.
old grill.
That's for cooking, not like a tooth thing. That's not like a shiny metal thing to put in your mouth.
Yeah, I got the whole crew some silver grills. We're doing it up. No, but this grill is insanity. And it was such a bar raise for the team. And already after this wave, it's like, all right, what can we put in place to make this a little bit easier? It's fun because a little inside baseball, talking to Joe, the landowner, he's been there for ages. And he was like, have you ever thought about going back to the old concession system? And for those who don't know, the old concession system had 2 lines. So you could come in on either side of the bay doors and enter, and you would meet in the middle, and it would buckle out to 2 cash registers where the condiment table is now. And boy, oh boy, would that be amazing, but it would just take so much duplicating of our system because we would need hot food available at both ends. We need soda available at both ends. It would just be a real juggle of our resources. But onward and upward, every single day is an opportunity for us to get better. And this team this year has been like so on fire. They just know it. This is almost a new opportunity for us to prove ourselves. Not having Jeff by our side, it's a testing ground year. And I know certainly in my mind, it's a best foot forward every single show in an obsessive way where it's like, I don't even want to give anybody the opportunity to think that there's any sort of slip this year. So it's just been incredible though. Every weekend seems to get bigger and better, and we can't ask for much more than that.
As we go into the weekend, as we're recording this, we're going into Schlockerama, which is an exhumed show where it is 4 films per night. And then it's Sunday, it is a single feature. And the staff is so looking forward to this weekend, not just because the movies are going to be great, but because there's nothing fancy. They're longer nights, but there's no guests, there's no vendors, there's no bands, we're just a drive-in showing movies, and sometimes that's
yeah. What a weird concept. Yeah, it's I always say we've become more of like a show place than your traditional drive-in or your traditional movie theater. It seems like every single night there is some sort of added madness that makes it again, special, or that Mahoning magic that's added on top of it.
Well, yeah, we always want to add what I call value added or a little sparkle. If we can get a video intro, if we can get a cool raffle, if the DJ set can be great, if we can do a food special. Not every show really warrants it, and sometimes we honestly do base it on what we project attendance is going to be, because it's hard to make money if you're spending a whole lot for extras and 12 people show up. But every show is in some way more than just a screening, even if it's just the cool trailers and stuff that we play before the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to jump on in, let you guys know what we got going on for August of 2024. It is a stacked calendar. And I guess it's worth mentioning, since we have so many people that are physically on the lot all the time that listen to this podcast, you may have noticed a change up in the calendar design. We had Andrew Kern work a new calendar design, and it is amazing. It has the visual pop to it. And one of those things, even sharing it out there today, a lot of people were like, hey, I love this calendar. So
he showed me that, and it makes so much sense. He altered what a traditional calendar for a week would look like, because only the weekends matter to us now that we're not doing Tuesdays anymore. So before, you had all this dead space in the middle of the calendar. You're trying to cram all the show information onto basically the edges of the calendar. And now he basically said, okay, well, we're gonna put the weekend in the center, Thursday through Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are going to be split on the edges, and it makes so much more sense, and it looks great, and it allows you to put a lot more information about the shows and bigger graphics that you can read. And that's why he's the graphic designer and not me.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, shifting our weekday series to Thursday now, it allows us to again connect that island, and no need for the space. But we kick things off with our Thursday Thread Up series continuing. And boy, oh boy, has this been a success. Like, we had a set number, and it was like, okay, if we can get this amount of people that are willing to come back every Thursday, we can continue to do this. It's been just toppling over that number every single week. And we give away those Thursday punch cards. Again, for those that don't know, Thursday, we give away these punch cards. The more you come to the Thursday Thread Up shows, you get perks, free popcorn, free tickets, things like that. We give away about 200 of those cards every single week. So it's like, it's crazy.
I was going to say, we keep running out and having to have more printed every time.
Yeah, every single time. And it's, as Bruno calls it, Newbie Thursday, where so many new people are coming in every single Thursday. Drive-ups are easily over the 100 mark. So it's one of those things. It makes it hard to plan on a Thursday, but definitely a huge perk with it working out and us enjoying it so much. But we kick things off this month with the 1980s classic. The 80s started out with a classic right there, Motel Hell, starring the great Rory Calhoun. Mark, where do you stand with Motel Hell? We've played it a couple times, and it is one of those films that just is a fan favorite, delivers with those twists. I love it.
Well, I did want to point out that we are not showing the re-rated version, much like Saturday Night Fever was released and it was huge, but it was rated R and they wanted to be able to let kids see it so they can make more money and they recut it as a PG. We are not showing the recut version called Motel Heck. We are showing the original Motel Hell. Uh, Motel Hell is a movie that I remember when I was a kid. I was what, God, 6 years old when that came out. And I remember a lot of kids talking about seeing it on cable, and I remember seeing the TV ads, and it just looked flat out scary. And when you watch it, it's pretty funny. It's a very dark comedy horror film. But as a kid, you just saw the scary bits. And I'm not going to get into the plot because the surprises are what makes it fun. But I remember people talking about seeing it on cable and renting it on tape and the imagery from it. And my main memory of Motel Hell, and I've said this on the podcast, or maybe it was one of the Patreon exclusive podcasts. If you don't know, we have a Patreon. And certain podcasts, only those people here, and we forget where we tell our stories. My hometown, Claremont, New Hampshire, had a downtown single screen movie palace, the Latches Theater, when I was a kid. And around the early 80s, they went out of business and closed. And the last poster that was left in their poster case was Motel Hell. And it was there for years, just in the poster case. And when I would go downtown to buy comic books or whatever, I would be like, yep, Motel Hell, still there. And eventually they covered it up with like white paper or something. And still I would be like, yeah, the poster is still there. And it was just amazing. My eternal memory of Motel Hell is this poster that nobody ever bothered to take down for this really kind of edgy horror movie in the middle of the shopping plaza downtown. It's a fun movie. Rory Calhoun, you may know from the movie Angel that he did around this time, a couple years later. He was a cowboy actor and one of those 50s Hollywood studio system actors who found his way into trashy movies in the 80s and kind of found a niche. My other one last thing about Motel Hell is Dan Fraga of Exhumed Films did one of the most brilliant things I've ever seen a parent do for a student or child, is that when one of his kids was graduating, I believe it was, you could buy pages in the graduation program. They do it as a fundraiser. And usually it's like a local business, or you buy a page and put your kid's picture on there. He did a full mock-up of Farmer Vincent's Fritters, which is the barbecue company in the movie that has a very dark methodology behind it, and he bought a full page ad for that fake barbecue company with the Rory Calhoun face, and he put it in the graduation program of his kid, which yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, Dan's the best. His kids, of course, are the coolest kids on the planet. It's
cosplay is amazing. They've worked half the shows we've done with Exhumed, and
they've grown up with us. That's what I love. I remember his daughter coming, and like she was like a straight up kid. Now she's like the just an amazing young woman. Yeah. So really excited about that. Anytime that we can bring Motel Hell to the big screen, it's always a thrill. Not going to spoil it as far as the details. We do always have this crowd of people that bring friends to screenings. And I know that they're passing on that love, or they had that conversation the week before saying, oh, Motel's really excited about this. What's that? Oh, I'm going to bring, it's this great kind of exposure, I think, opportunity for friends, which I love. The popularity of the Mahoning is very much a friend telling a friend.
And for anyone who misses the vibe of the old Tunnel Vision Tuesdays, which tended to be horror and exploitations and stuff, well, there you go. We brought it back to Thursday Thread Up.
Yeah, and it's a nice eclectic mix. I mean, as we mentioned, we played Princess Bride this last Thursday, and it's massive. Just the idea of trying to play into a bunch of different fan bases and genres. You never know what's going to connect, but so far, so good. Really excited about this fan event on the 2nd and 3rd, Friday and Saturday. Squad deep with Andre and Ryan. Andre Gower, the leader of the Monster Squad, came to join the Mahoning family. I guess it was 2021, maybe 2022, 2021 for
Something
sure.
Like that, yeah.
And it was an amazing success. Andre is probably one of the coolest guests that we've had out on the lot. Just very level-headed, knows the fandom and the fan base. We actually premiered his documentary, Wolfman's Got Nards, which was an ode to the fandom of Monster Squad. And we said, we've been going back and forth for the last 2 or 3 years saying, when can we get you back? And I said, if you come back, is there any way that we can try to do a Monster Squad reunion? He's like, I'll tell you what, Ryan is super into the idea of what you guys do. After I made my appearance, he would totally be into coming. So that's what we're doing. We're doing Andre Gower and Ryan Lambert, two kings of the Monster Squad, hosting a double feature each night. On Friday night, The Goonies and Monster Squad. On Saturday night, The Monster Squad and It from 2017, which ironically, we've actually played before. I guess it was 2018 when we did this. We did Killer Clowns from Outer Space and It 2017, which is totally against what our model is. It would have been a brand new movie practically at that point, but a huge crowd pleaser, huge with the younger horror fan base. And that's kind of what we were hoping for with that Saturday night. Yeah, where do you fall with Monster Squad?
You know, I think I was a couple of years too old when that came out. It's the kind of thing I would have been all over if I was, I mean, like I was huge into the Goonies, which was 2 years earlier, which we were also showing that weekend. Actually, yeah, Friday night starts with the Goonies, followed by Monster Squad. Saturday is Monster Squad, followed by It. And yeah, I didn't see Monster Squad until several years later, and it's one that I've liked more as I've seen it over the years. But
Yeah.
at the time, it was just, I think it was aimed at kids a little bit younger than me when it was new, so I didn't pursue that.
Yeah, I can't put my finger on where I first saw it, but likely cable. And then it became a big video store pull for the family and the group of friends that I had. I've mentioned it many times on this podcast. It was that movie that shifted my taste into a little bit edgier fare, you know? Got me into horror movies, got me into exploring Universal monsters. Like, that was my first exposure, even before legitimate Universal monsters, as crazy as that is. But I do love this fan base. I do love this movie. It has inspired me endlessly. I talk about the scene where Andre Gower is sitting on his roof with his binoculars and he's watching in the distance the drive-in movie theater screen. And like, that was my dream as a kid. It all started right there, where it was like, if I could live close to a drive-in, you could watch movies for free. And it's, you know,
Well, I
it
think I
really
told
got
you,
that going.
if people go back into the history of this podcast, wherever you listen to this podcast, scroll down, 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 down. We did a full interview with Andre Gower before that show the last time. It was you, JT, Andre, and I.
That's
And we talked
right.
about that. And in that, I'll ruin it and waste it again. I moved in 1987 from the house I had grown up to that point into another house that was within a short bike ride of being on a road that was on a hill above a drive-in, the one we had in my town, the drive-in that got me into what a drive-in is. And I was so excited that, number one, I thought I would be able to tune in the drive-in radio station from my bedroom and at least listen to movies for free.
Yeah.
And second, I was like, I'm going to get a radio and I'm going to ride my bike and I'm going to sit on the edge of the hill and I'm just going to be able to watch drive-in movies for free. And that was the first year they never opened again. But I had that same dream, even though I think I probably at that point had not yet seen Monster Squad.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it is. It's one of those. All of these movies really do tap into that, you know, group of friends mentality, hence the Squad Deep moniker. But it is. These were the type of movies that I obsessed over as a kid because it was exactly like my group of friends. We wanted to find a movie that had a bunch of different characters that we could put ourselves into and then recreate that, you know, on sleepovers. It's the same reason I loved, you know, Mighty Ducks and loved The Sandlot. And I loved, you know, all these kind of group kid movies is we were right in that era. And I fully expect people to gather their squads and come out and recreate and relive these memories. Of course, Friday is like shooting through the roof right away. Goonies, whenever we play Goonies, it's like we could play Goonies every week. And I feel like people would be like, I'm there.
It's so
Just
amazing
one
that
of those movies.
the perpetual legs that film has had. I mean, that movie was big when
Nuts.
it came out, and I loved it. And I had a ton, probably still do, a ton of Goonies memorabilia. Like I had the high C cans. Remember those huge cans of high C that were
Oh,
metal
yeah.
that you'd pop a thing in the top and pour out of the can? They had labels that had like almost like trading cards on them. So you would like cut the labels off and keep those. And I think if you send in proofs of purchase, they sent you, I still have them. They were like Goonies, like folders, like you would put in a Trapper Keeper or something like that, that had original artwork and stuff. I mean, there was so much merchandising of that, and it's never faded. You know, it's just always persevered. And it's so much fun. And it's like the ultimate kid adventure. Kids
Yeah.
without adults, running from bad guys, and not to give anything away, but there's treasure involved.
Yeah, I think it just taps into that core kid, adventure vibe.
Well, it's the
And
kind of kid adventure that you play at in the backyard, and you're seeing kids live it for real. And it was
yeah,
just like it's the dream come true.
heavenly. Yeah, I feel like so many movies have tried to recreate and tap into that and failed, where Goonies just forever. It's evergreen. It really feels that way. And then on Sunday, we shift into another tribute show, and we're really excited about this one. We lost the amazing Gilbert Gottfried, who many people know of his comedy, many people know of his acting work. But for us on the crew, it was all about Gilbert's podcast and the community that he created with that podcast, which actually inspired us in a way to try our hand with the podcast and growing our said community. So on the 4th, we are doing the Great Gilbert Tribute Show featuring Problem Child. And Mark, you're very involved in the fandom, as many connective pieces are here at the Mahoning. But we're adding a lot of elements to this show to make it as fun as possible for the fans. So what do we got going on for that one?
Well, we're as we record this, I was just announcing some of that today. Like it's that post is going up as we're talking. So it's a lot more than just Problem Child. I knew, or we knew, it was going to be more than that, but we didn't put it in the event description because we've been working on it. So it's not necessarily in this order. We have the world drive-in premiere of Kevin Doherty's documentary, Drew Friedman, Vermeer of the Borscht Belt. If you don't know the name Drew Friedman, you absolutely know his art style. He was close friends with Gilbert. He was on the Gilbert podcast, and Gilbert is in this documentary along with a lot of other comedians. And Drew Friedman he loves old showbiz. And if you've never listened to Gilbert Gottfried's amazing Colossal podcast, and you're like me and you love old movies and TV shows and music, you really should. It's not just some people think grating voice of Gilbert Gottfried. It's Gilbert Gottfried, Frank Santopadre, and just amazing interviews with old showbiz people, old actors and musicians and stuff. And Drew Friedman was a fan of that kind of stuff too. So this documentary has only been shown a couple of times. It's making its world drive-in debut on our screen. Kevin's coming out. He's got posters. He's got he'll introduce the film, all kinds of fun stuff. We have Lily Gottfried, Gilbert's daughter. She did a documentary about her father and about his amazing, like, freehand drawing artistic ability called The Hidden Talent of Gilbert Gottfried. That will be making its world drive-in debut, I think, between Problem Child and the Drew Friedman documentary. We have I'm putting together a themed DJ set, and it's going to be the original versions of all the songs that Gilbert sang on the podcast. Oftentimes he would break into song, or he would have musicians on the podcast and they would do duets on their hits, which were just hilarious. I think we're working with a lot of the behind the scenes people on the Amazing Colossal podcast on this event to do fun stuff and to have access to stuff, including Lily's documentary. We are going to have a short live trivia game that people on the lot can play. You'll have to download a specific trivia app, and the man they called the Rabbi on the Amazing Colossal podcast, he was a guest and he was a member of the team. He put together a Gilbert related trivia quiz like they would often do on the podcast, and we'll all be able to play along live on the big screen from your cars, which should be fun. I'm working with Gene Beretta on arguably one of the most ridiculous endeavors. Yeah. Gene and I talked. Gene, as I always like to point out, award-winning children's book author and illustrator. Who brings us with his brother Bill Mahoning, Muppets Take Mahoning every year. Gene and I have been working on this thing. It's a super in joke that I'm not going to get into here, but if you're a fan of the Gilbert podcast, he would mention it once an episode or so. A story involving Cesar Romero and orange wedges. We are putting together, God help us, an orange wedge toss on site for the daylight hours of the show. And I'm just thinking of this show as if you like Problem Child, come out, watch Problem Child on 35 millimeter. It's going to be great. You can go home if you want. But if you're a fan of Gilbert Gottfried and if you're a fan of the podcast that he did, this is a gathering for those fans. This is like we've done with a Beatles show or a Monkey show or other shows. If you are a fan of the podcast, this is an excuse to all get together in person. We all know each other online. We're going to get together in person, celebrate the man, celebrate the in-jokes, celebrate the foolishness. And I think it's going to be a really great night. It's a Sunday. I realize that, and it might go a little later than some people want, but the Friedman documentary is only an hour. Lily's documentary is, I think, maybe 10 or 11 minutes, and the trivia portion is going to be relatively short. So it's not really going to be like we're showing 2 full-length movies. Well, maybe it is going to be like we're showing 2 full-length movies. It's not going to be like we're showing 3 full-length movies.
Well, either way, I think the fans are going to come to play. It's one of those rare situations, and we were so connected. There was just such a crossover with his fan base and our fan base.
Well, our friend Dino, who's a
yeah
big friend of the Mahoning, is like their social media guy for the podcast. So he has been he and Josh, who they're friends, but they're also behind the scenes guys on the podcast. And Michelle's another person on the podcast. Like everybody behind the scenes has been totally helpful and willing to share this out on their socials and do what they can to make this a really fun gathering.
Yeah, and I remember talking years ago with Dino about trying to figure out a way to get Gilbert out. And, obviously it makes sense now that he's passed to be the theater that does the tribute for him. And we're so excited. I mean, again, just having the ability to do things like this connected to the programming is kind of perfect. Like you said, people are going to come out and enjoy Problem Child either way. Playing that trailer the last couple nights
really
of shows, oh my gosh, you just kind of forget how on John Ritter was at that point in his career. Is just like so perfection. And then we jump into the following week. Thursday Thread Up series continues. This one has a backstory, but single feature of Videodrome. For those of you guys that know David Cronenberg's body horror madness, this is right at the top of the list. And it was actually going to be a Cronenberg double, but one of the films that we so wanted was not available on 35. So we decided, hey, this is the perfect choice for the Thursday series. And obviously, again, playing that trailer on a regular basis at the theater just reminds you how amazing that movie is. I remember seeing that movie for sure, video store rental, very first time I saw it. And it split my mind in two. Like Cronenberg was that guy. And it sent me down the rabbit hole. It was my kind of intro for the Cronenberg stuff. And yeah, we were obsessed with this thing. Where were you at with Videodrome?
I was vaguely aware of it when it came out. I used to buy Starlog magazine, and I think Starlog either mentioned it or maybe there was a Fangoria cover inside it, because it's a really gory, goopy, weird movie in certain sequences. And I knew about it a long time before I saw it. I might have actually originally seen it when it was on late at night edited. Like CBS used to do this thing, the CBS late movie, and they would play a movie at like 11:30 or midnight or something, but they would be heavily edited. I feel like I saw it edited, but they left in enough to know it was really weird and disturbing, and I was a little afraid to finish watching it at whatever age I was. I saw it many years later, and not that long ago, actually. I think I saw it on Blu-ray, and it's very good. It's just really weird and gruesome. It would almost be a great movie to show at VHS Fest in a way. And that's actually a screening on my birthday, so I probably will not be there.
No way. Oh, man, we were going to make you a cake,
That's all right.
The hand giving you the cake out of the television. It would have been perfect.
Oh, God.
No, you're right. Cronenberg is that dude. Real Weird Weekend, for those who remember that event, which was replaced by the John Waters event last year. I pitched Harry. I said, look, let's do a Cronenberg night. Let's try to do a Cronenberg John Waters thing. Let's do weird alternative freak out cinema. You know what I mean? And Real Weird was born. And we knew for sure we wanted to tap into that filmography if we could this year, and that was the perfect opportunity.
I'm always going to advocate, if we ever do a Cronenberg weekend or triple or something, for Fast Company, because it's the movie of his that nobody knows, but is the 100% most drive-in movie he ever made. It's the car movie.
We've talked about this
drive-in car movie with William Smith and Claudia Jennings about funny car racing, that anybody would watch that and be like, who directed that? Hal Needham, Andy Sidaris? No, that was David Cronenberg. So it's fun. I have no idea if there's a print, but I think that would be a blast.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, Cronenberg. What were we going to call it? The Cronenberg effect. That's what we were going to go with. The following Friday and Saturday, the 9th and the 10th, right after Videodrome, this is a dream come true. Grindhouse, the original theatrical cut, including the fake trailers everybody knows and loves at this point, the trailers that have spun off into their own movies. This is one of those perfect stories where we have done Death Proof, And I think we did it twice, if I'm not mistaken, for our Tarantino event. And my thought this year is like, we got to do a Robert Rodriguez thing. I'm such a Robert Rodriguez fan. The original pitch was Troublemaker Weekend, Robert Rodriguez's studios, Troublemaker Studios. And the very first thing that I reached out for was Planet Terror, to try to, again, complete that double, at least up on the Mahoning screen. And reached out to Disney thinking like, okay, I'm going to get the single feature. And they were like, well, we have, I think they said like 28 different versions of the movie. And I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, there were all different versions released with the fake trailers, things like that, intermissions. So I stopped her right there. I'm like, you have the original connected to film double? And we were off and running. Like, as soon as I knew that was in the Disney vault, it was like, what do we have to do to get that? So that was born, that happened. And of course, in pure Mahoning fashion, we can't just play 2 movies. We have to keep the party going. So we're going to do a secret third feature each night in the Grindhouse vein, which we are not speaking a word of. I'll never forget seeing this movie in the theater, because I know that it was an infamous flop, but in my screenings of it, and I think I saw it 3 or 4 times with a audience, the reason I fell in love with this movie even more than I actually love it is that the fan experience in the theater. People were rabid into this thing.
I saw this opening weekend at the Latches Theater in Brattleboro, Vermont, which is, as I mentioned earlier, Latches was a theater that I went to as a little kid. It was a regional New England chain, and it's a glorious old single screen movie palace that they messed up a lot of it, but they kept the main auditorium intact. So it was a giant screen. It feels like going back in time. And I loved it because these are the kind of movies I love. And I've loved these movies since I was a kid. And it's always like Tarantino and or mostly Tarantino, I guess, when he anoints a certain genre, suddenly all like the movie hipsters are like, oh my God, Grindhouse movies. And I'm like, yeah, they've been around for decades before you were born, but I'm glad you are coming to them now, and let's have fun with this. So I was like, cool, they're making the kind of movie for me that I love. And I was not surprised that a 3-hour hard R gore movie paying tribute to films that nobody remembers wasn't a commercial hit on Easter weekend. For some reason, people were shocked. And I'm like, what do you think is going to happen? This is for like, yes, these filmmakers are hot property, but normal people don't know about this stuff and don't care. I guess a lot of normal people who went to see this had no concept of what a double feature was, and they were getting up to leave after Planet Terror ended. I thought it was brilliant. I loved the fake trailers. I loved the whole thing. And I never was that big a fan of Death Proof. I know most people say that's the better of the two, but being somebody who loves 70s car movies, it felt like it was more paying lip service to 70s car movies than really delivering on that. I've liked it more as I've seen it over time, but it just makes me want to watch Vanishing Point and Dirty Mary Crazy Larry instead. But it's really cool to be able to play this as it was originally released, because even on home video you couldn't see it as it was originally released. I don't know if they ever finally did release it properly. Maybe they did.
No, they never. You could never see the connective. Yeah, they did this really fun release when it first came out, where you could have the audience reaction track, which I love because it really was like reliving that first couple screenings of it, where people were going nuts.
See, when I went, it was middlingly attended. It was a couple 100-seat theater, and there was maybe it was half full. There wasn't a lot of people there. And my friend and I, we were laughing our heads off and having a blast because, again, these are our kinds of movies. And I think a lot of these people, I don't know what they were expecting. I mean, it wasn't like the marketing campaign was deceptive as to what you were getting with this film. It really was pretty upfront with the Rose McGowan machine gun leg and all the other stuff. But one thing we should point out that we mentioned early on when we secured this information, but we haven't mentioned it again, is that one of the cars from Death Proof is going to be on the lot with us.
What?
Yeah, we had somebody approach us, which is the best way to have value added at your show, to not have to go looking for it. The man who is the owner of the white 1970 Dodge Challenger that is involved in the car chase at the end of the movie, he purchased that and has restored it, and it's going to be on the lot. And people have said when he fires that thing up, it just gives you goosebumps because it's that roaring 70s muscle car engine. Apparently, he owns both of the cars from that chase, and he's working on restoring the other one soon. But he's bringing that out for everyone to see, and people are thrilled. They said somebody said that that was their most exciting guest announcement maybe ever for the Mahoning was that we were going to have the car from Death Proof there.
It is mind blowing to me. It's like I love the added value that comes to us sometimes. And we've had several people from the movie reach out and being like, "Hey, can we make it work? Can we?" It's like this thing has some legs for the future for sure. But doing something really special like that and having people come and take a picture with the star car. We've seen it several times with the Batmobile and the Ecto One, and we're like, I know it's going to make people's dreams come true, and it is maybe the coolest little added bonus that we could possibly have, maybe besides having Quentin or Robert do an intro. You know what I mean? But it's just, I cannot wait for that double feature, triple feature, really. And then we close out that weekend on the 11th with the Punk Rock Drive-In Flea Market, which returns, was such a success last year. Returns with a 30th anniversary screening of The Crow. And I know what you're thinking. That Crow movie is on everybody's mind. The new remake photos came out, and right away people were like, this ain't my Crow. And of course, as the booker, I'm like, okay, everybody's talking about their love and nostalgia of the original Crow. Let's see if we can make something happen with that. And obviously the connection with the punk rock market. I think it's a really, really fantastic one. And again, added level, added layer of icing. The beautiful Rochelle Davis will be coming out, star of The Crow, to hang out as well. Really excited about this one. Did you see The Crow in theaters?
Oh yeah, this is when I was in college, and it got a major push for the soundtrack. That was when like the soundtrack was almost more important than the movie for a while.
Yeah.
Where the record companies, like the indie record companies, were all about pushing the soundtrack, and through that soundtrack there'd be all this cool. I had friends who worked at the college radio station, so there'd be all this cool swag and all kinds of stuff. I was interested in seeing it. It looked cool to me at the time. It was, unfortunately, the dark cloud of the fact that Brandon Lee was killed while it was being shot always is going to hang over this movie, and what a potential he had that was cut short. Much like Bruce Lee, technically, when you look back. I mean, Bruce Lee did a lot more substantial stuff than Brandon Lee did, but the Bruce Lee story is that he'd made a bunch of films in Hong Kong that were very successful, and he was on the cusp of the release of his first American financed movie that was going to send him to the next level, and then he died. And that was what happened with Brandon Lee. Like, this would have been the movie that kicked off a new, huge, probably phase of his career, and he unfortunately was killed while it was being made. It's a great, dark, my memory, I haven't really seen it in a couple decades. It's a dark goth superhero movie, superhero noir rock and roll movie. Yeah. And I often will think of one of the lines from the film while I'm at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. It can't rain all the time. That's what I say to staff. It can't rain all the time, can it?
Yeah, it is a weird hook to say, like, if it does rain that night, it might actually add to the event.
Because I believe it's like raining almost all the time in that movie. So it probably
totally, yeah.
And our vendor markets have just done so well this year with the caliber of vendors we've had out that are so amazing. Like half the staff, spends twice the money they're making on the clock that day at the vendors. And the vendors are all really happy. So I hope this is another successful vendor market. I don't even know who's coming out for it, but the array that we've attracted this season has been really, really impressive.
Oh, it's killer. The markets have connected so much. And I can't even think about a time when we didn't do it because it's that kind of big a part of what we do. And it's worth mentioning, we have like 40 vendors for that event. So it's going to be as big as a VHS Fest.
40 vendors?
It's crazy.
I'm sorry. That's breaking news to me. I don't mean to talk over you, but I had no idea. I thought it was going to be like 5 or 6 or 8.
No, this thing like blew up immediately. So we're filling that whole front lot. It's going to be crazy. And I should say tickets also exploded on this. As soon as we announced this event, it had so much reaction to it. And again, I think it is because people are so incredibly nostalgic for the movie that they love versus the, movie that's being pumped out and remade for a modern audience, especially, and we talk about it all the time. I hate when a movie is deemed terrible before it ever comes out and the internet attacks it. But with this, in this case, it was like viral and in my face where I'm like, we got to program this thing. So Perfect Connection, Punk Rock Flea Market, Rochelle Davis, who's local. Did you know Rochelle's a Philly girl? She's
No,
up.
no, I'm
Yeah.
surprised how many people we find that we deal with are much, much closer to us in the middle of nowhere than we expect.
Yeah, we're her local drive-in. She's going to come out and rock out with us, and it's going to be a fantastic night. The Thursday Thread Up series, I'm telling you, if you guys don't have your cards yet, like, what are you doing? You'll have 3 easy punches throughout this month. Um, Many of you guys
All you
know that.
have to do is just insult Bruno 3 times to his face, and there are 3 easy punches coming your way.
Yeah, Bruno takes the tickets every Thursday. We love him so much. So the influence on our love of movies, we try to shine a light on as many of these movies that were so important to us and shaping our love of film and our love of genre. And for me, the loss of Peter Bogdanovich recently put that right up on my radar, where if we had an opportunity to do a Bogdanovich night, and originally it was a double, of course, but when the Thursday series came into play, it's like, okay, let's shine a light on it. The Last Picture Show on the 15th, all-star cast, black and white, Bogdanovich gold. Where do you fall with Last Picture Show, Mark?
It's one that I've not seen a lot, but I have a huge amount of respect for. It's just this great, quiet moment frozen in time movie about this dusty Texas town and the people who live there and the ones that, aspire to get out and the ones who are just going to be like their parents and their grandparents who just stay there and, keep the town running if it survives. And yeah, the cast is amazing. You've got Sybil Shepherd, Timothy Bottoms, Jeff Bridges, Ben Johnson. Funny enough, we had an introduction to a film at Tromathon called Curse of the Weredeer. And it was the director's name was Ben Johnson. And Virgil was like, "What's his name again?" I said, "Ben Johnson, just like that guy in Last Picture Show." Uh,
It
and
took everything within me not to mention that on the air.
yeah, not to be confused with the dead man. Here's young Ben Johnson. And yeah, Last Picture Show is great. Bogdanovich years later did a sequel called Texasville that amazingly brought all the cast together again.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about the Thursday shows and the Sunday shows is that's where we stretch a bit. That's where we can play because the bread and butter, all the guaranteed attendance is going to be Friday and Saturday. So we tend to be less risky with what we show on those days. But the Sundays and the Thursdays are where we'll show things that don't fit into a weekend. Like what kind of a weekend would you throw or double feature would you throw Last Picture Show in? It's not as commercial as a Goonies or a Crow or a Grindhouse, but it's great. And
Yeah.
throw it on a Thursday. Let it stand alone. A lot of times longer movies too work better as a Thursday or a Sunday. So I'm hoping I can make it out to that because I've never seen it on the big screen. And that's one of those movies, if it's a nice quiet night and all you hear are the chirp and the peepers around you, it's like Night of the Hunter. It can just be a perfect under
Oh, totally. And that's the thought. Something about black and white on this screen too. I just absolutely love it. And it does. It's one of those movies that was such an influence on me, like I went down the rabbit hole after I saw this movie and fell in love with Peter Bogdanovich as a filmmaker, but also as just a film personality. I loved more than anything when I was in film school listening to Peter Bogdanovich interviewing a classic director, which he made a point to do.
If I may, there's a great TCM podcast called The Plot Thickens, and each season is about a specific actor or director. They did one on Peter Bogdanovich that's fabulous, but then they did some bonus episodes where they were his interviews with these iconic directors from
it's unreal.
40s. It's so worth listening to. And yeah, the guy was brilliant. He was a film writer before he was a film. I mean, he wrote about film before he wrote movies and acted and directed in movies. Yeah. And he was just one of those raconteurs with his cravat who just loved movies. And to the day he died, you could just listen to that. He was like Friedkin, you could listen to them
totally
talk about whatever the topic was. And it was just fascinating.
Yeah, he's the same type of draw for me as Tarantino is, where it's like I will listen to this dude wax philosophical about film. He's just right in the wheelhouse with me.
Did you know that Bogdanovich wrote a script that never got produced for a film that would reunite Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis on film?
Get out of here.
It was either 60s or 70s, and I've read about it. I don't know if it was a treatment, if it was a full script, but the idea is that it would almost be like a Crosby and Hope Road picture where there were two separate characters, and then at the end of the movie or the last section of the movie, you finally brought them together again and they did stuff.
Wow.
Did he have such a love of old showbiz and old movies and those guys that he wanted to try to make that happen and get those guys together again? I hope someday that surfaces. Even if it was a treatment, I would love to see what he had on the page as an idea for that.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, Bogdanovich is the man. This could have been an easy Sunday essential. But like you said, Thursday, perfect little bite-sized ability for people to come out and experience and, again, spread those wings a little bit. On the 16th and 17th, we're bringing back our good friend Matt Blasi of the Blair Witch Experience. And this time we're doing it 2 nights. Back to the Woods, a Blair Witch 25th anniversary fan event. We did a screening of Blair Witch, I guess 2 years ago. And it was on a Sunday. And one of those things where it's like, all right, we'll see how this does. It exploded. It was crazy. And I remember saying to Matt, we got to do this in 2 years for the anniversary, and we got to do it on a weekend. So that's what we're doing. In true Mahoning fashion, we are adding some elements of value to it. Not only will you have Matt Blasi there, who is maybe the most informed fan of the Blair Witch films, but we will also be having a secret feature each night, and we're letting Maddie pick those movies. So really excited to see what he does. Some people are like, why don't you play Blair Witch 1 and 2? It's like, we can't license Blair Witch 2. I mean, we can't rightfully do that.
And you leave it up to Matt, and strangely, what he programs is Savannah Smiles both nights.
Yeah, really excited about this one. Again, testing the waters is what we like to do often, and Sundays and Thursdays are a great way to do that. And this was one that just proved like, oh yeah, this can't be held within a box of Sunday. We got to try to do this legit. And the same appeal as Camp Blood, the core appeal of like, hey, I'm going to set up a tent and watch camping horror movies. The same appeal here. People will certainly want to pitch their tents in the darkness with those, crickets chirping. It's just very, very kind of a perfect ambiance to watch this movie. Yeah.
I remember seeing Blair Witch before it was in wide release. I had gone to Boston to visit a friend, and it was one of those things where it was like only playing like, New York, LA, Boston, Chicago, going very slowly. The marketing campaign was brilliant for that too, where they made you think it was real. They had those wanted posters and 800 numbers and billboards and whatever, however they did it, flyers to make you think. And people didn't know, they weren't savvy to found footage at that point. It had been done very, very rarely, but it had sort of been done in the past, but not like that. Not a movie shot on a camcorder. And I went to see it at this art house theater with a friend, and there was a adult, we were like probably in our 20s, and there was an adult woman sitting next to us. And when the movie ended, she turned to us and she said, was that real? Like, she legit thought it was real. Yeah. And that theater had this cool display in the lobby where it was supposed to be like a replica of their campsite. And so it was like a tent and camping gear and some stuff strewn around, those little Blair Witch stick figures and things, and the missing posters. And it was such a cool, creepy experience. Now, I've come to loathe found footage. I hate it. I think it's the least effective way to tell a story, but I have infinite respect for what Blair Witch did with such little money and such ingenuity to create a genre, more or less. Even if it had been done, it really was not done much before that, and it really has. It can stop being done any time now, as far as I'm concerned. But we're talking 30-something years later, 30 years.
Yeah,
and you're 2 or 3 a week. Found footage movies are still coming out. So yeah, it's and what better say? The one way that it would be better to me, we're showing it on 35, right?
Yes.
The one way it would be better to me, when that film was still in the theaters, a friend of mine got a bootleg copy because he worked at the college radio station. And one of the ways I think these record companies would like ply, gone were the days of, cocaine and hookers. They had to send stuff through the mail. The way they would ply college DJs was to send them movies that weren't out yet on videotape, like bootlegs, dubs and stuff. And he got a dub of Blair Witch that was from the video source, because it's supposed to be shot on camcorders, high 8 or whatever. To me, the best way to see it would be from a video source, like video resolution. But I don't know if it's ever been released that way. I think everything we've seen on video has been the film transferred to 35 as it was shown theatrically. But that's one of the rare occasions where I was like, if we could get a videotape copy of that, that's how we should show it.
Yeah, this movie worked on me like crazy and worked on the world like crazy.
Oh yeah.
Like you said, people really did believe that this movie happened and this was a true recounting of this experience, and it freaked people the hell out. I'll never forget, seeing it. And, 25 years ago, I would have been what, 15? So it's like, yeah, it freaked me out. I definitely bought into the campaign and was just like, this, did you hear about this movie? It's totally real. They're releasing this movie that's real.
We
So
weren't
it
used to that at
really,
that point. We weren't used to movies lying to
no,
us that way. Narrative film lies to you, but it shows, okay, here's somebody's life and it isn't. But they don't say up front, this really happened and their footage was found and all that stuff. I mean, like it was seriously marketed really well. And it's the kind of thing I could see like being handed around on a videotape with no cover. Like, oh, you gotta watch this. Like they
yeah,
almost could have put it out that way with no trailers, no previews, no anything. Just put it out on tape.
yeah. But yeah, again, very core level when it comes to, kind of the birth of a genre, the birth of, whether or not you love the found footage genre. Certainly, I would say like the king of the found footage films, and really probably the only one you're going to see, the Mahoning program. But really excited. We love Matt Blasey. Matt Blasey's been a friend of the family for many years and deeply connected in the fandom. He does tours of the Blair Witch filming locations. He'll actually take groups out into the woods. Yes, that's super metal. So yeah, Matt's going to bring some fun for that show. And then the following night, the Mahoning Music Series continues as we pay ode to two kings, the Blues Brothers. Boy, oh boy, not only does this movie mean the world to me, the Blues Brothers are everything to me. Their music is everything to me. One of those vinyl records, we had a couple of them actually that just lived in our house when I was a kid. And ironically, I thought they were a group before they were discovering they were a comedy act.
It's easy to figure that. I mean, if you listen to the records, they're not comedy albums. They don't really.
They're freaking great.
They had in their band some of the best like session musicians alive at the time, and they did live shows. Maybe not a lot, but I think I want to say at least one of those two albums. Are they both live albums? I know it was Briefcase Full of Blues, Made in the USA, and the soundtrack to the movie. The soundtrack would have partly been not like that, but yeah, I mean, it's easy to, if you were a kid and you didn't know that they were. And again, let's take a jump to the left and then a step to the right. It's an SNL sketch, but it wasn't even an SNL sketch. It wasn't like their characters were anything other than these two guys who came out, barely talked, and did a song once in a while. Like the fact that you created one of the funniest movies of all time, one of the greatest action movies of all time, based around characters that were nothing. There were two guys in blue suits, hats, and shades who played blues music. Yeah. They created this whole Dan Aykroyd wrote this insane backstory, far more insane apparently in the original script than what we saw on TV or on the film. And the music is great. I first knew about the Blues Brothers because my uncle bought me the single for "Give Me Some Lovin'" and "She Caught the Katy." I still have it. Still have the picture sleeve. It's the only 45 I've ever had that actually had the film's release date printed on it. So the Blues Brothers movie in theaters June 26, 1980, or whatever the date was. And I didn't see it until it was on. For a while, Universal did this thing called the Universal Premiere Network, where it was a syndicated package of movies that they would send out to the independent stations. And I watched it one night, and I laughed so hard. It was in my bedroom. I was falling off my bed laughing, like I was upside down laughing. Then the next funny thing would happen that would hit you before you stopped laughing, and you start to be concerned that you might die because you're not breathing, you're just laughing and screaming. That was that movie for me. I'd never seen anything like it, and it still makes me scream laughing. It's so quotable. The cast is insane. I mean, Carrie Fisher, while she was still Princess Leia, John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, obviously, Henry Gibson as an Illinois Nazi. I mean, it just goes on and on. It's bonkers. James Brown, the musical guests in it are insane, and that soundtrack kicks ass.
It's like a movie that lives on another level. It's a whole vibe, that movie. And we have screened Blues Brothers before. I don't think it was part of the Mahoning Music Series, but
we did it as a double with Animal House, which to me
that's right. Yeah, Belushi. Right. Yeah, and honestly, like Belushi Aykroyd, it doesn't get much better. Like Aykroyd for me was that dude that just like, could do no wrong. Even when he did incredibly wrong, I was like, I love this dude.
You mean like Blues Brothers 2000?
It didn't matter. I was just like, I love this guy so much. Yeah, no Blues Brothers 2000 up on that big screen. But we are gonna bask in Blues Brothers, man. And little inside baseball, we did find out that there is a Bluesmobile in Pennsylvania. Like I just Googled it and it popped up, and the article was about a dude in PA who had a Bluesmobile, and we tried to track this dude down. No idea where he is.
He's in Detroit now.
Ah, snap.
I did. I looked into it, and from what I understand, he basically moved. He took the Bluesmobile and went to Detroit. I doubt he's going to drive
across the country. Yeah. Yeah, so really excited about that one. Anytime we can blend the two loves, music and movies, it's just an absolute blast. The following week, no Thursday show, unless, of course, you are a Patreon member. If you do not know, at our top Patreon tier, the Simplex tier, we host a once a month live on-site screening that is exclusive just for those members. If that entices you, Mark, why don't you tell the people how they can sign up?
Yeah, if you go to patreon.com/Mahoning Drive-In, I believe that's the URL. The URL is also, however you're listening to this podcast, the URL is below it. What we do is we started off doing these once a month screenings on 35 millimeter with titles either from our collection or from fellow collectors. And it's just a fun members only night at the drive-in. We play some weird trailers, and we play a 35 millimeter feature that probably has either never hit the Mahoning screen or has not hit the Mahoning screen since it first came out. Tends to be deeper dish stuff. I eventually may change that, but for now, we're all just having fun discovering these movies together for the first time. And then we also do once a month. We started doing this in the off season when we couldn't do the 35 millimeter screenings because the place was closed. We started doing virtual screenings through Zoom, and we licensed those titles from AGFA, which has an insane library. And so the way it works now is one Wednesday a month you get, if you're a Simplex member, you get the virtual screening where we all watch on our computers or hook it up to your TV and chat along and have fun. And then the next Thursday we do that 35 millimeter screening at the drive-in.
Yes, and it's so much fun. It is a perfect kind of insiders club, if you will. And the people who make up the Patreon Simplex tier are like #1 fans, people that we see at the theater all the time. It's a great way to get connected and the ultimate way to support the Mahoning, especially in the off season. But during the season, you get all sorts of perks, all sorts of goodies. So,
and if somebody is like, why would I want to support a theater that's closed in the off season? Well, we have storage units that we have to pay for that house our print collection and a lot of other things. And there are a lot of year-round expenses, and it actually does help build up the coffers so that we can start booking films and start buying merch and start doing things that are necessary to start up the next season. So, and the income that we get from the Patreon membership helps us do cool things like the Simplex member pins that you get every year or the exclusive t-shirt, stuff like that.
It funds our fun projects in the off season as well, which everybody loved, including the road show, which we will be working on and massaging for your pleasure in the off season. So stay tuned for all that stuff. After that Patreon screening on Friday and Saturday, the 23rd and 24th, I guess it would have been 3 years ago, I sent a heartfelt letter to Disney and was like, hey, I understand that the Disney Vault is closed off to many. Is there anything that we can do to try to get access to said vault? And at that time, you know, our legend was slowly growing. I told them what we were about, pitched them on our all heart, all passion model and approach, and they loved it. The only thing that they said is, yeah, play Disney, but you can't play any Disney animation. And of course, as soon as we made that announcement, people started listing all the Disney animated movies that they wanted to see. So we knew in our head that we had to slowly chisel and find a way to gain access to the coveted Disney Vault when it comes to the animated features. And at the end of last year, I started seeing the New Beverly does these really cool animated Disney screenings, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. But I sent an email again, very heartfelt, and was like, you know, at this point, there really is no difference between what the New Beverly does and what the Mahoning does. We're sourcing from the same places. We have the same stance in preservation and all of that. And if they have access, why can't we have access? And sure enough, a week later, I got an email back that was like, if you want to request some titles, all I can do is say, write a nice heartfelt letter along with those requests, and I will submit them. So I did that right away. She did suggest to start in a mid era. Don't go right away after the old stuff, the really, really old classic stuff. So right away, my head went to the 90s classic musical animated Disney movies. And right at the top of that list, for me specifically, was Lion King and Aladdin. I'd say they were my number one and number two in my childhood as far as movies that just ruled my life, and I was a kid, so it's easy bread and butter right there. But they said yes, and we got Lion King, we got Aladdin, and we're going to be flip-flopping the order, so you get Aladdin and Lion King on Friday, Lion King, Aladdin on Saturday, and it is going to be a celebration, man. We ended up calling it Walt's Animation Vault, and we got the great Andrew Kern working on a really cool t-shirt design for that weekend. It is going to be a trip. Mark, was this right in the wheelhouse for you as well?
Not really. I did see them in the theater. At that point, we're talking, what year was Aladdin? We were talking 92 and 94 for these.
Yeah.
I was in college when these came out. So that theater I talked about earlier, the Colonial Theater in Keene, that's where I saw a lot of stuff. They were... We used to, can I use mild profanity when talking about Disney films?
Yeah.
We used to, thank you. We used to refer to that theater as Disney's bitch, because in order to get the big animated films from Disney, they had to play everything Disney released. So it was almost like the days of the studio system, where it was like every Touchstone and Hollywood Pictures and Walt Disney Pictures productions released, they had to play so they could get, because this was in the era post Little Mermaid, where suddenly Disney animation was big again. So they were the theater that played Blank Check and Deceived with Goldie Hawn and of Red with Jim Belushi. I saw all that stuff there. But they got Aladdin, and they had Aladdin for like a solid year. We used to have comedians on campus that would once a month or once every couple times a month, they would come out. And one guy came and he joked, he's like, I haven't been here for a year and Aladdin is still playing. It huge. And it was this, I say crossover hit, because it was a family film. It wasn't a kid's movie. Robin Williams being present for that, and the level of comedy that he was just fire hosing across that screen, the adults were having as much, if not more, fun than the kids at that movie. So I think
totally.
I loved it when it came out. I'm not a big Disney guy. I'm not a big kid movie guy, unless it was something I saw as a kid. So there aren't ones that I've revisited, but there's no denying the quality in those movies that have hung on, and the songs and the catchphrases from those movies. And both of them have both spawned long running Broadway shows. I want to say the Aladdin show might still be playing in Times Square in New York. Lion King was gigantic for a long time. So yeah, these are like the two, I would have to say, the two biggest modern Disney animated. I think they're maybe bigger than Little Mermaid.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that gave it the resurgence and the modern musical kind of push again, brought it all back. And they were just on fire in the 90s. Like again, wheelhouse for me. I would have been 8 and 10 or something like that. So it's like these were the movies that I got brought to see, in a theater because I was a child. And yeah, I'll never forget seeing Aladdin in a theater and falling in love with the genie and falling in love with the comedy and watching my mom cackle. It was the perfect, like you said, crossover movie where kids and adults could really get down with that one, and just delivered. The amount of times that I've seen The Lion King is probably endless, just endless. And of course, now that I have Virgie, The Lion King and all the Disney movies just are in constant loop. And I will say, as blasphemous as the Aladdin remake is, I actually really enjoyed the Lion King live action remake, which Virgie loves as well.
Thought it was well done.
Yeah, fabs.
But what's funny to me is that everybody calls it the quotes live action, but it's still all CG animated.
There's nothing live action about
it. It's technically still an animated movie. It's just not like 2D cell animation.
Right, totally.
When
I can't believe it worked so well,
Oh no, it looked great. The Jungle Book one looked really great too. My Disney youth was in theaters. I lived in the era of the re-releases before home video was what it became. So I got to see all the classics on the big screen on film.
Yeah.
They played everywhere. They would bring them back. And I mean, they were national re-releases. And I think Disney was still open enough at the time that if a theater was like, hey, we'd like to play Jungle Book, we'd like to play Fantasia, you could just rent it and book it out. So mine was the era of Disney animation. New Disney animation was really pretty dead when I was a kid. You know, I remember I saw The Fox and the Hound in the theater, and I liked that, which I believe co-stars the voice of our friend Keith Coogan.
That's right.
I didn't see Black Cauldron at the time, although I think that would be a great contender for a Sunday single or a Thursday or a Dark Side of Disney show if we did that. It was mostly, and I saw like the tail end of the Disney live action movies. Like I went to see Unidentified Flying Oddball and the Herbie movies at the drive-in and stuff like that. But my youth was when Disney was kind of not really doing a whole lot of animated stuff anymore. So it was really
that big resurgence. Yeah.
They became this juggernaut again post Little Mermaid. It was interesting to see.
Yeah. And then we see it all happening again, you know, with all these new modern Disney musicals, Pixar musicals. But yeah, we're so excited to have access to the vault. As you guys know, the Mahoning is known to be the punk rock alternative horror drive-in. But to have these bread and butter family shows that we can place throughout our calendar, it really does help. If anything, to bring in the young audience that inevitably will be our fan base in the next 20 years. So
what I tell people is the Lion King show will pay for the Great Smoky Roadblock show. And
yes,
the King show,
and the Gilbert show, and all these things we like to swing on, you know.
And the Denny Terrio show that is coming.
Yeah,
and people, it's all about getting people on the lot who've never been there. And it might be, you never know what that thing is that's going to get them there. But once they see what we do, 9 times out of 10, the people fall in love with the place and they tell other people. And those people will come back for the horror show. So it's like, don't ever think we're abandoning our beliefs or our taste or anything when we do that. It's all about keeping the train chugging along.
That's right. You know, and now that we've become such beacons of the drive-in culture and mouthpieces for the drive-in culture, we want to expose as many people as possible to what we do and what we love. So doing the family shows as a kind of pacer between, as you guys have heard, a lot of really edgy programming is a great move and something that I absolutely love. And it's not just because I have a munchkin, you know, I love seeing people with their kids on the lot. It really is heartwarming. It's where all of us fell in love with the drive-in was when we were kids. And we go out of our way to thank those parents that bring their kids to some of the alternative shows by saying, like, you're doing it right. You
like
really
the
are.
one who had the small child with a very accurate recreation of the Toxic Avenger from the Toxic.
Yes.
That was
I was
amazing.
like, this. It was so good, but I kept thinking, like, this kid ain't staying, is he?
Wait, that
But, you know,
weird, dear.
some parents have that line. I love it. Like, my parents were definitely that way, where they were like, you know, we're not holding back. I think Sandy was the one who talked about it's the thing that started the conversation, you know, with her mother and all that stuff. So
My father took me to see Stripes and Easy Money when I was underage.
shit, yeah.
I'm eternally grateful for that.
Rite of passage, baby. Our Scorsese Sunday screening of Taxi Driver comes in for a landing on the 25th. That's one that got moved from, I think, the very beginning of May.
Yeah.
As many of you guys know, we lost our great leader and master projectionist, Jeff Maddox, this year, who you hear his voice intro and send you on your way, not just at the theater, but on this podcast as well. We had to shift so many shows because we had to open up late, reestablishing the business once again. And Scorsese and Taxi Driver, that really worked out well. We were able to hold on to that print and for a very long time and get that screening up and off the ground. So Taxi Driver was that movie, again, like video store era, that when I discovered it split my brain in two. Once again, like, I loved Scorsese, Goodfellas, all that stuff. And it's like, this movie is hard to the core, you know, and that last, I guess, like half hour or 20 minutes, it's just so off the wall crazy.
Nihilistic, grim, dark.
Yeah, like it's just
depressing.
so dark. And I knew that we had to get to it. The Scorsese filmography is very long. We've done the Scorsese double, a Scorsese night of Goodfellas and Casino, but this is one that's right at the top of the list. Did you see this? Where did you see this first?
Well, I didn't see it when it came out because I would have been two. But my
Yeah.
so my mother did take me to see Saturday Night Fever the following year. I first saw this. I probably rented this when I was really getting serious about loving film and not just movies. And we had video stores. I would have rented it, and it would have looked terrible. And I eventually was able to see it on the big screen for the first time. I lived close enough to Dartmouth, and the Dartmouth Film Society had a really great theater and a program. And they ran it on Valentine's Day one year, which I thought was just a sparkling
Genius.
I remember seeing it on TV, Boston's WLVI Channel 56. That was like where I saw so many movies as a kid. And yeah, they showed it edited, but I remember the scene where they go into the adult theater and the screen is all blurred. And I was like, oh man, I need to see this uncut to see what's on that screen. And then you go and you watch it uncut and you're like, no, they blurred the screen. It's an R-rated movie. They're not going to go that far. It's for people who fetishize or glorify old sleazy New York City, this is your movie. In Times Square, this is what it's about. It is so grim. It is all about crime and vice and unhappy people, and the Bernard Herrmann score, those tones that keep playing from the get-go. This is more or less a horror movie. Like there's a whole genre I think of as crime horror. Dirty Harry is one, Vice Squad is one, where it hits the same beats that a horror movie hits, that sense of dread and darkness and grimness and occasional violence and things. And Taxi Driver it's just like a taxi. What's like the opening of the film? It's a taxi driving slow through the city at night, and there's just chaos and evil everywhere around it. It's coming off the heels of Disney, this is exactly what you want.
Such a Mahoning move, that is the perfect right turn. Hard right.
It's so quotable. The acting is fabulous. It's so naturalistic. If you think about Peter Boyle in this movie, you wouldn't. He wasn't an actor. It's unmissable if you've never seen it. And
Harvey Keitel is the greatest pimp on the planet.
Harvey Keitel is weird and bizarre. Jodie Foster in a role that probably required a lot of counseling before, during, and after. De Niro in the role. Is it the De Niro role?
Yeah, the role of a lifetime. You look at me. Yeah, I mean, it's
just perfect.
Yeah, we're so excited. I mean, again, whenever we can do these essential films, like we know people are going to be coming out. We know people are going to be making the trip and making a point to be there. So really excited about that one. And then, of course, closing out the month with the holiday celebration of Camp Blood 10. 10 years of Camp Blood with Exhumed Films. That and Zombie Fest were truly the very first shows that helped establish the Mahoning into what they do. These weekend-long run fan events. And Harry and the team have done such an amazing job over the last 10 years. And this year they're going back to the well, which I absolutely love. People would always come at us and be like, yeah, you need more Friday the 13th in this Camp Blood Friday the 13th show. And it's like, well, you can't get any more Friday the 13th than this. On Thursday, you get Friday the 13th, the OG, as the pregame into Camp Blood proper. And then on Friday, you get Camp Blood 2, 3, and the final chapter. On Saturday, you get New Beginning, Jason Lives, and New Blood. And then on Sunday, guys, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell, and Jason X. You get literally 10 Jason movies over 4 nights. We also have some guests. Why don't you tell them about the amazing guests that we have? What dreams come true this is.
We have from Friday the 13th well, it wasn't called part 1. From Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th part 2, Adrian King. And from, I believe it's Friday the 13th part 2, Amy Steele. And
Final Girl, right?
Yeah, iconic. Arguably the most iconic Final Girls in the Friday the 13th series are going to be joining us on, I believe, Friday and Saturday to meet fans, sell autographs and photos, and just hang out. And it's always a blast when you have somebody from the movie there. And this is going to be If every night of this doesn't sell out, I will be shocked. I've been telling friends, they've been asking me how ticket sales are going, and I'm like, well, it's pretty far off and they're doing well, but the way it usually goes is Saturday sells out, then Friday, and then Thursday and Sunday, there's usually tickets left because those are the nights that either people have to go home or need to get there. But it's going to be a blast. I don't know if we'll ever do this again. I don't know if anybody will ever do something like this again at a drive-in because it's a 4-day commitment. But it's going to be amazing. You can guarantee there will be at least one costume Jason stalking the lot. We don't even have to set that up anymore. They just show up. They just walk night, and we're like, is that the real thing? This is what people ask for. We've done this with Exhumed a couple of times now where we did the entire Halloween franchise. We did the entire Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And now we're doing Friday the 13th. And wowzers, this is what Camp Blood is all about. I mean, it was all based around the idea of the Friday the 13th movies, and over the years, Harry and Exhumed didn't want to repeat themselves, so they expanded it to other films that were 80s slashers that were set in the woods, and then it was just other 80s slashers, and now we're bringing it all back home. Jason comes home to the Mahoning.
That's right.
Will survive, and what will be left of them.
Yeah, I am so excited, and it's one that, again, people look forward to, just like VHS Fest, just like Zombie Fest. It's people's vacations. People plan and drive across the country to do it. And obviously, not a hard sell with this one. It's like you said, once in a lifetime. If you are a Friday the 13th fan, the idea of seeing, 10 of these babies up on the big screen, it's just like heavenly. So be sure to mark your calendars. This is 1 month of programming at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. Gives you an idea of how progressive we are when it comes to our programming, how eclectic we are when it comes to our tastes and our programming. If you guys love what we do, please help spread the word. Every single person that tells another person about the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, it does wonders. You have no idea. Between that and social media, that was the beautiful thing about the last couple of shows, is having so many people on the lot with so much happening on the lot. Our social media explodes. Like, literally, we cannot keep up with the stories to share onto Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. It's just nonstop. So thank you guys so much for supporting the Mahoning Drive-In Theater so hard this year and getting us back up and on our feet after this massive loss. And we're so looking forward to the month of August and beyond.
As you leave the theater, folks, please be careful. Don't let this happen to your car. Be sure to remove the speaker before you leave. If you should accidentally pull a speaker loose, please turn it in at our snack bar or box office. Thank you.
And on that note, Jeff, we love you. Take it away, my friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for coming out tonight to the Mahoning Drive-In Theater. We hope you'll come back and see us again real soon. The exit is on the right-hand side of the screen at the front of the field, and most importantly, have a very safe trip home. Good night, and God bless you.